Hello, my name is Tracie Kipper, and I am the Japanese Language and Culture Lecturer at the Kansas City Art Institute and a member of MAFLT at Michigan State University. Today, I would like to share with you how to develop your own foreign language portfolio, which could be used as an assessment with your students, which is, I feel, is especially good during this virtual time that we have with our students right now. So a little bit of background about my students. So at the Kansas City Art Institute, this is a four-year college of art, media, and design. All of the students are studying for their BFA. Some will get a BA in creative writing, but they are all artists and they are all familiar with the idea of an artist portfolio. For artists, this is they're showing their best work, their best creations, which is a little bit different than a language portfolio. So in my language portfolio, they are showing a development from the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester and how they progressed as language learners and users. For my students, this was a bit of a shocker for them. They prefer to present something that is already perfect. And so for them, the idea of being allowed to show development was a hurdle to get over at first. The language portfolio is a way of collecting all of the students' artifacts and reflections, assessments that they have been given into a cohesive unit. So you can see what the learner was like at the beginning to the end of a specific period of time. My students use this for their Asian Studies certificate program. So it could be anywhere from 1 semester to 4 semesters of work that they are collecting. Ideally, my students are using this after graduation as well as part of their art portfolio. The portfolios they're generally two sources of portfolios, I feel. One is the European language portfolio, which is highlighting the language learning that's happening in Europe with exposure to multiple languages at all ages. And the Linguafolio, which is US-based, which I feel is more ideal for learners here in the United States who are not exposed as much to languages on a daily basis. Regardless of which one of those language portfolios or even of your own portfolio that you make, they will all have basic elements. And the elements of the language portfolio are the passport, the biography, and the dossier. The passport page, this is showing who you are right now at this moment as a language user and learner. The biography section is going to be a collection of reflections about your language experiences, cultural experiences, and things that you do that shape who you are. The dossier is where we have proof or artifacts of our language development. Okay. So let's take a look at these elements a little bit more in depth. The elements of the passport page, and this is really just a single page. We're going to have the name of our student, ideally have a picture of them, their contact information, current assessed level, and this could be their self-assessed level or one that they have received through courses that they have taken, proficiency test scores, and anything else that you feel is important for your records. For mine, I have my students' majors, and if they're involved in the Asian Studies certificate program or not. And here we have 2 examples of different students of mine. One is using a Google Sites, and the other one chose to just have a Word document for their portfolio. Okay. The passport section, the biography section is where we're going to put things that show who they are as a person. Okay. So in this section, we have our self-assessment or the goals at the beginning of the semester, where we might have a self-assessment at the end showing what they can do. These can simply be a list of can-do statements or something more official like Linguafolio's assessment and can-do pages. We also have reflections. I have been putting their cultural autobiography, their first semester, in this section so that we can see throughout their time with me how they are developing as a person. And I also like to have their intercultural reflections in this section as well. And another element we've added recently have been experiences outside of the classroom. My students have done telecollaborations with a school in Japan, and many are into online gaming now with other Japanese speakers. Some of my students are actually professional gamers, and so they are really enjoyed being able to write about interactions they've had in Japanese during these gaming sessions. The dossier section is where we're going to put the artifacts of their language learning. In my dossier, my students place audio recordings, essays that they have written in class, videos that they have done on YouTube or Flipgrid, and posters and other ways of expressing the language. Since I'm at an art school, we do a lot of posters where they're using the language in art. Ideally, your students are going to be allowed to choose which essays they are placing in their dossier, which videos. You can select ones that are required, but you should also have some in there that allow them the freedom of expression so they can choose what they feel best represents their journey in the language. When creating a rubric for your language portfolio, of course, we're going to come back to our 5 C's that we have been working on with MAFLT. We want to give our students creative expression. Let them choose how to create their portfolio. Since it is an expression of who they are and they are going to be owners of that, they should be allowed to choose what font, what theme, what style of portfolio that they're going to be presenting. However, in mine, I do have a list of things that they are required to have, but everything after that is what they want to present. Okay. So your artifacts need to show demonstrated improvement. This has been something difficult for my art students because they want everything to be perfect when they submit it. And I want them to know it doesn't have to be like a native speaker. It doesn't have to be perfect. I want to see that you are making steady improvement throughout the semester. All of our artifacts that we choose, we should be thinking about these 5 C's and have examples of all of those in the portfolio. And what technology should you use to create a portfolio? We can be as high tech or as low tech as we want to be with these. My students in a virtual environment have preferred to use the Google suite of apps. So we've been doing Blogger and YouTube, Google Sites and Google Slides. But I know of people who have used LinkedIn as a way of showing their language portfolio, or a special Facebook page or websites. It's really anything that the youth works for your students would be appropriate. And here are a few more examples of different types of language portfolios. So the CEFR has a wide variety of language portfolios that you can already download for free. Some are language specific, some are age specific, some are looking at a whole range of languages that the student might be studying. This is an example of one that I found on Teachers Pay Teachers. It's very simple. It's for elementary students. This first page would be the passport page, and on the inside it had places for the students to write their opinions of what they were studying, as well as places to paste or to write down their essays and other things that they were doing with the language. The textbook that I use online has a portfolio built into it. So it is automatically collecting the work that my students are producing within the textbook series. And Linguafolio, which is a little more professional. It does cost, I think, $2 a student to have one that's more professional and kept online. I haven't felt that that was right for my students, so I haven't gone into that direction yet. Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Here's my email address. And I would like to show you a few more examples, if I may, of some of these resources that I'm providing here. Let's see if it will allow me to go there. It's in the way. There we go. There we go.
You might need to stop your share and start again.
Yeah.
If you want to show something other than the PowerPoint,
okay,
then you need to stop your share and either share your.
It kept coming down and I couldn't get it out of my way. Let me share one more time. I'll share my.
You can either share your desktop and that would do it, or you can. Yeah. Okay.
Now I got it. Here we go. All right. So what I'd like to share with you now are two of the templates that I've created for my students. And I have made them available to the public. So if you click on the link in my references, you can go straight to this page. This is one that I've done on Google Slides. My students will make a copy of this, and then they change all the information. They can change the layout and how it looks. These are linked, so it will link directly to that section. So I'll just quickly go through here. They can leave or erase anything that's not pertaining to them. This is for a community college community education program. So all of the students were adults planning on using this after studying Japanese as possibly part of a resume that they would give other employers. Currently, this is what it looks like for my passport my students at the Kansas City Art Institute. They have one that's on Google Slides, Google Sites. Gives them a little bit more control over what they're presenting. Okay. So all of my instructions are in italics, and they simply have to erase it. And it gives them an idea of everything they have to be placing in the dossier section. Okay. Another link that I provided in the reference section is to the National Council of State Supervisors of Languages. They have a variety of can-do statements that you can download and fill out. So any of these right here can easily be downloaded, and students can fill out and then place in their portfolios. All right, so thank you very much. I appreciate this time to talk to you about language portfolios.
Okay, you still have 5 minutes.
Okay.
So
language portfolios are wonderful. No, I really like this method of assessment for my students. Art students are already super stressed. They have a high level of anxiety. Some of them are dyslexic. I have a lot of learning challenges sometimes. And so having this other way of demonstrating what they can do with the language has really reduced that stress. When I give a paper test to my students, almost all of them shut down. And so when I give them the opportunity to demonstrate what they can do, I am blown away. So for my students, this is the most ideal way to demonstrate what they can do from the beginning of the semester to the end. Ask away, Betty.
Okay. I have found in my experience as a student that Portfolios really stressed me out
Oh,
because, well, now at Michigan State, I'm a little more used to it. But in my undergrad, my portfolio, I had never done anything like that before. It was really difficult for me. I know that your art students have to put together a portfolio, so they're kind of
mhm.
used to it and they struggle with the imperfection part. But do you have any suggestions for how to scaffold portfolios for students that really struggle with the idea of compiling their work? And
Mhm.
I'd also like to add a lot of students are procrastinators, myself
Yes.
included. And so when you get to the end, you're just throwing it all together. It can be really stressful. So I was just wondering if you had any advice about that.
So I recommend that my students do not throw this together at the end. And so whenever we create a major project, the next thing they have to do is put it into their portfolio. So in our LMS, we're using Google Classroom. They had the assignment to do their activity. Then they got feedback. They had the assignment of, do you want to make any corrections, or do you want to improve anything that you've done? And then they got another alert or another assignment that said, put this in your portfolio. So usually about 1 week after the major project was due, they were reminded to put it in the portfolio itself. So, and then I checked them regularly, and I found that they were keeping up with putting them in. My students really enjoyed doing the blogs. We used Blogger, and the discussion section wasn't working very well with the way I had envisioned it and the way Google Classroom was working. So kind of scrapped that, and they put all of their discussion material into their blog. And then classmates could comment on their individual blogs if they wanted to. And they really enjoyed that. So they would copy the link from their blog topic and stick it right into their portfolio. So just copy paste was very easy for them. I found that the easier I made that, the more they were likely to do it.
Thank you.
Welcome. Also, one thing about my students is, being art students, they're used to the idea of critiques. They call them critiques. We might call it feedback. My students would be like, they would be described as having a thick skin. Like, you can tell them anything about their art and they'll say, that's a very good idea. And then they internalize those, make those changes, and then present what happens afterwards. I found with my students, I also needed to give them that ability to receive feedback from me, especially if they had the grammar in the wrong place. Like, occasionally they'd put the verb in the middle instead of at the end of the sentence. And if I gave them the opportunity to redo their work so it could be in their portfolio, they were much more willing to make mistakes and interact in class. They didn't feel like they had to be perfect all the time. So that was really helpful for them. But again, they like being to receive critiques on what they do.
Okay, that's the 20-minute mark. But Tracie, my question that I'd like you to talk about a little bit more is that when we're using portfolios for assessments, there are lots of different choices that we make, and the choices that I've seen you make here, it sounds like one is that you give them very specific instructions about what goes into it, but you let them choose their own platform. And then another choice is sort of how you handle it as a formative versus summative. So if it is something that they're adding to and adding to and adding to and adding to, and they might add to across courses or throughout their learning versus just in one course. So could you talk a little bit more about why you specify what you specify and leave open what you leave open, and then also how it works as an assessment that lets you assess and give grades for a course versus the portfolio as a picture of the students learning over time. So I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll try my best to answer the question. So for their participation grade, of course, being virtual was very stressful for all of my students this semester. My level 1 class, it's a 3-hour class for one sitting, and that's just overwhelming for everyone. All of the classes at the Art Institute are like that, though. They're all 3-hour-long courses. So for them, I allowed the activities on our online coursework is with Marugotto. I let them do those courses and use that portfolio from that document or from that website as proof of their participation in class. So that was one part of their assessment. Did you complete the participation necessary? And then for their writing assessments, I'm looking at can they write in katakana? Can they recognize katakana? Can they write in hiragana? I chose assessments where they can demonstrate their abilities. So a lot of the times, at very low level, it's hard for them to write an essay because Japanese is a category 5 class. Or 5 language. You can't expect them to write an essay like a first semester Spanish student would be able to, right? So a lot of my assessments were, can you demonstrate that you know the difference between katakana, hiragana, and kanji while learning about, we did that with our disaster preparedness project, where they received an actual document from the Japanese government that said what you should have in your preparedness bag, and they had to be able to look at that and pick out all of the katakana words, which are cognates in English. And from those, they created posters about what they would put into their disaster preparedness bags. Another poster that my students did was Kentucky Fried Chicken. We had a unit on Kentucky Fried Chicken and Christmas and how they're related in Japan. So students created advertisements with campaign slogans using adjectives to entice people to try this new Kansas City style Kentucky Fried Chicken burger or whatever they created, right? So learning how to put adjectives together to describe something was another assessment that they had. So I did have assessments for that day, but I also wanted to see overall ability improve throughout the semester.
Okay, so I'm sorry I missed the presentation part, but I already checked Tracie's slide, and I know what she's going to talk about. So I just wanted to make a comment. So because I am Japanese native, and I grew up learning foreign language in Japan, which is completely different experience of learning experience in general for foreign language. So in Japan, the assessment is always exam-based. Always you need to get the high score to be acknowledged that you are good in like certain languages. And for me, it was always, I need to get the high score. I need to remember the vocabulary, meaning I need to remember the formula of certain grammars. And then versus what Tracie is doing here is amazing, especially for art students who are good with art, and they can utilize their uniqueness to the language program, and then at the end of the semester or at the end of each courses, they will be able to see what they have done in the past, and then it will stay as a record for maybe website or a blog. Mm-hmm. And then, if it's just a paper exam, I mean, in the United States, it's not the regular assessment style in general, but I just wanted to bring up this, part of perspective, because I know this program has a lot of Japanese national to try to become a Japanese language teacher in the United States or maybe in the world. And I just thought that it's amazing things that Tracie is doing. And I wish I can maybe imitate a little bit what Tracie is doing, but also you need to be aware that what kind of students that you are teaching. Mm-hmm. And I had a conversation with my supervisor at my institution, and I wanted to kind of try to do something similar, but my students are not art student, obviously. Some of them are very into art, so I can do something like extra curricular or credit type of activities, but not like mandatory, like classwork. So I just thought that I want to make a comment about that. I'm very fascinated about this idea. I really like it. In the future, I want to learn more about it because Tracie has a lot of creative ideas or to assess the language, not the way of my thinking is assessment. So I just wanted to make a comment.
Thank you. Thank you. So in that Marugoto online, it does have like quizzes and tests and things like that. And I can give my students those types of things. Like they have to do it in order to complete the Marugoto participation part that I require. But I let them retake those as many times as they need to. Right? I found that if I give them a paper test, they're just going to shut down and it's not going to work. But when you look at how they're being graded in their other courses, like I work in the illustration department, and you don't get an illustration exam. What you have is you create something, you have to present it, you have to defend it, you have to answer critiques from other people, and then all the professors together are going to determine your grade. So it's a community effort of, did you meet the requirements that we were looking for? Did you meet the standards? So where I'm at, it's very different. I have had students from other universities attend my classes at the Art Institute. It's always a big culture shock for them because they want drills and tests and quizzes. So when I do have students from other campuses coming, I give them the option of, would you rather have a test? So some of them choose that. Some of them want to try this new way of developing and learning how to utilize the language.